I'd like to call to order the Proctor City Council meeting for Monday, June 5th, 2023. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll perform roll call at this time. Councilor Benson,
Present.
Councilor Reuter,
Present.
Councilor Johnson,
Present.
Councilor DeWall,
Present.
Mayor Ward's also present. Please let the minutes reflect all others in attendance. I believe there's a sign-in sheet maybe going around right now. Looking for a motion to approve the City Council meeting minutes from Monday, May 15th, 2023.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Before making that motion, I would like to move 6F, Resolution 23-23 to 6A, and then just have all other items follow behind in corresponding order. So with that change, is there a motion to do so?
I'll make the motion.
Councilor DeWall made the motion to approve tonight's agenda. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That'll bring us to comments and suggestions from citizens present. The public comment suggestion period of the meeting is when the City Council offers a time for everyone in attendance or watching from home to address the City Council. Once we move on from the public comment suggestion period of the meeting, members of the public will no longer be allowed to address the council unless the mayor acknowledges you. As a general rule, the council will listen to all comments but will not comment on or respond to any comments made by speakers. The council will not engage in dialogue. However, any council member can ask questions. If you'd like to address City Council during the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting, please come forward to the podium or dial 218-628-6289. Before you begin, please state your name and address for the meeting minutes. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the City Council will be prohibited from using obscene, profane, or threatening language or boisterous conduct that disrupts the meeting or the security of the public. Is there anyone at this time that is interested in participating in the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting? Again, that dial-in number is 218-628-6289. We'll give that a minute. Hearing none, we'll move on. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So move.
Councilor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Reuter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That will bring us to 4A. Clerk advises council, reschedule June 19th City Council meeting. Administrator Rich.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, Juneteenth was declared as a holiday by the state of Minnesota, where no public meetings or transactions can happen on that date. We did have it negotiated in our labor contracts that employees would get Juneteenth off as a holiday when approved by the state and when approved by the City Council. So to cross that T and dot that I, I'm asking that we reschedule the June 19th City Council meeting to Tuesday, the 20th, which is our default date, and then honor that in the employees' labor contracts.
You heard the recommendation from Administrator Rich. Is there a motion to move our next city council meeting on June 19th to June 20th and adopt that into the labor agreements. I'll make that motion if there's a second.
Second.
Second by Councilor Reuter. Any further discussion? Councilor Benson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there like a year leeway on Juneteenth for the 19th, June 19th? Or is it, I mean, it's negotiated for staff?
But the state did declare it a state holiday.
There was gonna be a delay on that, but then they added it
Thank
to
you.
the omnibus bill to make it immediate. It was gonna be pushed out to
Okay.
2024, but they put it in the omnibus bill and approved to accept it or adopt it this year. So what the labor contracts read, I believe, is once the state approves it, then it would come to council for approval as well. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose, motion passes. That'll bring us to 4B, Second Street update. Administrator Rich.
Yep, long-awaited project started last week. It started with temporary water services. The contractor started on time with temporary water services and continued through the weekend, starting with reclaiming the concrete and bituminous. And the street is actually closed to through traffic right now. They're working from 7th Street up to 9th Street. And then we'll continue the work, start around the school when school lets out. And of course, we're keeping in mind school traffic and the MS 150 that's coming up. Meetings will be held Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. at the parking lot, north parking lot of the school. Anyone's welcome to attend. The first one starts next week, not tomorrow.
Thank you. Any discussion on that?
Just one, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Wall.
The bituminous, are we receiving any of that, stockpiling any of that?
So USA Utility Systems of America are going to be stockpiling it somewhere in the city, but they plan on reusing it throughout the project.
I think what they're currently doing with it is laying it down for traffic to continue one way at least, right?
Yeah, they're reclaiming it and resurfacing to maintain at least one lane of traffic.
And when they're done with that, we'll have a stockpile of it?
For a while, and then they'll be reusing it in the bituminous for, I don't know how, but they said they're gonna be reusing it.
Eventually, when it's done, if there's any leftovers, I'd like to make sure that we get it, because it gets used.
Yep. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none brings us to 4C, LMC Legislative Review. Administrator Rich.
Finance Director Brunfeld and I sat in a legislative review given by the League of Minnesota Cities. I believe it's recorded, a very valuable piece. It was a very, very busy season on the laws that affected cities. I encourage you to watch it. But also in July, we have invited the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, who is also a group that we belong to come give a presentation to you. Everything from legalizing marijuana to program funding for our various projects to grants to increases of local government aid and public safety. So I think they'll do a lot better job summarizing and highlighting the changes than what her and I can do. But I encourage you to watch that League of Minnesota Cities webinar. It was very informative.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Move on to 4D, 2023 brush pickup. Administrator Rich.
As you can probably see around town, there's a record year for brush pickup. The city, we have over 200 residents on the list, and it seems to be growing. But the street crew is working very hard in amongst their regular duties to get this cleaned up. So if you hear complaints or you have questions, they're working as diligently as they can.
Yeah, and just a reminder for anyone watching at home or out there that just be patient. It'll get picked up. And if you need it gone, you can haul it down to WLSSD as well. So, any other discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4E, jet repair update. Administrator Rich.
Thank you, Mayor. We will be having our structural engineer and a crew, volunteer crew, coming on Monday, June 12th. It'll be about a 3 to 4 day project to inspect the jet and then make the necessary repairs that needs to be made. They'll make it as instructed by the structural engineer. So we'll get it fixed and safe again.
Thank you. Any discussion on the jet repair? Hearing none, we'll move on to 6F, Resolution 23-23, authorizing sale of bonds and delegating awarding authority to pricing committee. We do got Paul Steinman from Baker Tilly to answer any questions, but we're looking for a motion to approve resolution number 23-23. And this is for the Second Street project.
So move.
Councilor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Benson. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Paul, did you have anything to add?
Pretty easy,
Yeah, pretty easy.
pretty easy. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. All right, that will bring us to, back up to 6A, 2024 bonding request discussion. Councilor Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As council knows, we were pretty late on our request to the legislature last year. The one item that we did have on the sales tax increase did get passed. Other cities, a lot of cities got a lot of money across the board. And while it's not a bonding year next year, sometimes those years have been very good to Proctor in getting requests. And now is the time to make those discussions, sit down with our legislators. I put down a handful of items I think that we could look at and consider. And I certainly invite others to contribute. I do have a list of all the bonding requests that were approved last year, whether it was in the capital budget or, for municipalities, other government agencies, recreation. So you could see that opportunities that we could use for improvements to Proctor. And while some come with costs, others are just outright grants. And of course, it always helps if there is a regional equation to our requests. And I think we have one on our agenda tonight. But, the Munger Trail Spur, the LCCMR Park expansion, Lake Superior Zoo Trail, South St. Louis County Fairgrounds updates, those all have those regional significance. Even Park and Ride, working with the DTA. So those are just some very quick ideas that I scribbled off for tonight's agenda.
Thank you, Councilor. Any discussion from council on any of these items that Councilor Benson brought forward? I just got a couple comments. I would be supportive of the Munger Trail Spur. We got a good plan in place for that. Hermantown's already working on their portion. But keep in mind, we also have, last meeting, we approved the I-35 corridor bonding request, and as Councilor Benson mentioned, there is one on our agenda tonight that council will be looking at approving. So I don't know how many of these we want to throw out there, but I guess personally speaking, I'd be in favor of the Munger Trail Spur for sure.
Ms. Mayor?
Councilor Benson.
And I am sensitive to the requests that we make and the workload that we put on city staff trying to get all these accomplished. I think there's a feeling down at the state that you know, while the range got lots of money, so did Duluth. We were kind of left out of that, the mix. So, you know, I would certainly not be afraid to be aggressive in our choices. And if they just don't work, this time around, at least we have ideas in file for the next round of grants appropriations.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Counselor Benson. My concerns aren't necessarily with city staff. I know our staff is great, would be able to handle that workload. My concern would be with these bonding requests, there's typically a match dollar amount, right?
Sometimes.
So that would be a concern of mine, and my other concern would be is if we get approved on all of our requests, do we have the plans in place to move forward with them? Or are we gonna sit on the bonding money and have it taken away because we couldn't perform the project?
I think we do have a little leverage because Proctor was creative to serve the iron mining industry. We exist because of that. Our community is cut in half by that railroad. It takes up a lot of space, acreage. They're taxed at a much lower level than commercial, residential, industrial. And this may be a moment where that would also be, even though it's not on the list, a legislative opportunity. That does not cost us any money.
And again, I would be okay with something like that. I just worry about being approved for something we're not ready for, don't have the funds to finance.
Well, at least with the IRRB, that does open up some financial opportunities.
Thank you. Council have any other discussion or action items that they would like to take on these items? If we want to go with any of these bonding request discussions, we would need a motion to pass a resolution for any of the projects, a separate resolution for each project we decide to pass. Councilor Benson?
Yeah, and some of these, like the LCCMR, I think that deadline has already passed. I'm not sure if it was the end of May or the end of June, but it would be difficult to put that together that quickly.
Okay.
They have a pretty early deadline.
Does
May I ask, Councilor
Administrator?
Benson, are you proposing these bonding requests to be in by this upcoming May 15th deadline to the Office of Management and Budget? Or are you, when you're, like the LCSMR, that's grant-based?
Yes.
Okay, so if you were wanting to get any of these in the governor's bonding request, it is due by May 15th, that specific program, and you would need a resolution in order for me to submit that application.
May 15th?
Sorry, June 15th. And also, if you were to ask me, I think we're most prepared for a Munger Trail spur
Yes.
with the studies and feasibility studies that we've done in our trail plan.
And if I might, you know, and one of the frustrations is that we know that our park, which is designated as a regional recreation area, is next to the street garage, which is, you know, transitioning. And we've had the opportunity to discuss that, and that really hasn't been high on our agenda. And though, you know, maybe not for 2024, but at least 2025 is.
Yeah, well, and you were saying that LCCMR has kind of passed already, correct?
I believe it has.
And that's the street department area, so maybe that's something we could discuss late fall. Try and get it for next go around.
But, you know, again, this is just here to stimulate discussion on what we could do with that space, how we can incorporate it into our regional recreation area. That's already designated then.
And I agree with you, that discussion doesn't need to happen, but I think I've said it before, but I'll reiterate the fact, but shouldn't that start with our Parks and Rec Committee, that discussion to come to council?
I was hoping that it would have over the years. You know, I certainly am not a top-down kind of the good guy. I want it to come up. And maybe it's just not on anybody else's agenda. It is on mine.
Okay. And maybe Administrator Rich can add that to the next Parks agenda for discussion, to put it on their radar at least.
Mr. Mayor, one
Councilor
question.
Will, yeah.
When we're talking about the Munger Trail Spur, I know there's been talks previously on connecting with Harmontown and getting through Proctor and then going to Munger. Would it not behoove us to just worry about getting from Proctor to Munger? That's what I'm assuming. So when I look at these project lists, I could see 3 pretty easy, obtainable, one being the Munger Trail Spur from Proctor to Munger Trail. Second being, I would assume it wouldn't take much effort to reach out to the fairgrounds and infrastructure. They used to, when Mr. Cyril was kind of running things, it had a capital outlay for years.
Yes.
And I would think it wouldn't take much effort to look at some of the infrastructure, buildings, grounds. And then obviously we're gonna hear about another potential. I don't wanna throw 30 things down there, but I think it'd be okay to throw a couple, 2, 3 things down there that I think we could not use absorbent amount of time, staff time to put some things together. Understanding that June 15th is more of a kind of a quick blurb summary, right?
More of a letter, correct?
Yeah, it's,
Nothing really official other than some topics. So I guess my view on it was to maybe keep it to the 2, 3 items for this year.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Benson?
Yeah, and like the Lake Superior Zoo Trail, that's only on there because that was a recommendation from a former Lake Superior Zoo director. Park and Ride, you know, that's with Duluth. And I wouldn't be bashful about just loading it up. We have a senator and a representative who will tell us whether or not that's too many. And I've seen the list of those proposals. You know, when you look at 3,000 bills, there was a number of cities that had a handful. And some of them, at least a few, it was for the same project, but they were just worded slightly different. You know, just hoping one of them would resonate with the legislators.
Great, thank you for that. So what's council's pleasure on acting on any of these items tonight? I will entertain a motion to pass a resolution for the bonding of Munger Trail Spur. If there's a second.
I will support.
Councilor Benson made the second. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Is there, Councilor Benson?
Yeah, and that doesn't preclude us from making other resolutions
No,
later.
it will need a resolution for each item, so I figured we'd do, if there's other items out here, we'll do a separate motion in second for those resolutions as well.
I'll
Thank
make a
you very much.
motion for the fairgrounds update.
Counselor Johnson made the motion for the St. Louis County Fairground updates and infrastructure. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Any further discussion on any of these items?
Do we want to make a motion for their proposal right now?
No, they're on the agenda coming up
Okay.
here, that they have a presentation. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to 6B, Grandma's Marathon Proctor permit. So in your packet, there was a map showing a diagram of the bus routes, drop-off areas for Grandma's Marathon. If you see, the bus route will come down Uggstead across Kirkus, and buses will line up there to do drop-offs and pickups. And all other traffic can flow on the blue line there, heading off Boundary towards Uggstead. Just looking for a motion to pass the loading site map.
So moved.
Counselor Reuter made the motion. Oh, I should say that there was a public safety meeting prior to this meeting, and this was recommended by public safety, so. Counselor Reuter made the motion, Counselor Johnson seconds it. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Benson?
Thank you. Has the event center been used in the past, or is this the first time? It was used last year?
Last year, yeah. And it worked out good, right, Chief? Yes. Any further discussion?
And this is Grandma's Marathon or just half marathon? Both, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. That'll bring us to 6C, PETA feasibility study presentation. Mr. Schwartzbauer and Mr. Mattson.
I'll stand to begin with. Mayor Ward, Council, we're here tonight to give you an update on a feasibility study that we worked on for a part of 3 years, that's it. And we divided it into 3 parts for you, and you'll have a handout associated with it, as will people in the audience if they wanted to look at that. But basically, my job will be to talk a little bit about history of sports complexes in the Duluth area and a vision of the facility. And remember, everything we'll be talking about, Council, is about a regional concept. You know, all the towns in the area, all the schools in there, they've done a really good job. They've put together a lot of things for their schools and their communities. This one here, as you'll see, is going to be much more than that. Followed, Eric Mattson will talk about the process. He's the chair of PETA. And then Chad Ward will talk a little bit about moving forward on it. If you could save any questions for the end, they might be answered as we go along. So with that, let me just set up the first one. And each one of us will have a different heading. Mine is, you have a place in Proctor. But the 3 subheadings, the sports tourism, the adaptive/unified recreation, which could also mean sports, and youth through adult sports will show up in each of our presentations. A couple of years ago, a Proctor athlete with disability. Simple goal was to get across that finish line having not walked any part of that race. If you look closely at it, you'll see a cross-country runner waiting for him to come across. On one corner, you'll see Glenn Gilderman, Proctor grad, coach, teacher. They are not, oh, thank you. Is it on?
Yes.
They are not there to celebrate the disability. They're there to celebrate the accomplishment. There's a website called We the 15, and that means 15% of the world's population, or 1.2 billion people, have a disability. And all they want is what I've basically highlighted there. And this showed up on the Residents of Proctor Min website when this took place. That this was a great example of visibility, accessibility, and inclusion. We are there celebrating a Proctor athlete. We'll come back to that a little bit later, how this all plays into there. But first, the history teacher in me has got to talk about how we got to where we are. It was about mid-1990s, Duluth, in its decision, budget-making decision in the school district, cut all sports for the junior high. DABA comes into existence, and they ask St. Scholastica to come up and has a feasibility study for a 4-court facility. Made sense. Approximately that same time, two of the board members, Rockney Johnson and Mike Gerber, they accepted invitation to go with Mayor Gary Doty to look at a recreational needs task force. Also coming at about this same time, Salvation Army, the Ray and Joan Kroc Foundation. If you remember, they were going to put in a center. That failed, but at approximately the same time, the Heritage Sports Center comes into being. And great facility, the Heritage Sports Center. Boys and Girls Club is run out of there, but a facility that we'll be talking about for a regional concept still was not to happen. Now, if you're wondering, does this mean that youth basketball doesn't exist in Duluth? Just take a look at this RBA results. This is this last winter from their newsletter. Look at how many kids in Duluth were able to play basketball. Coaches, schools involved. What it tells us is that regardless of whether or not they have some facilities, they are going to make things work. It's not easy, but they did make things work. About 10 years later, from when we looked at Gary Doty and the other ones, there was a study. It was a mini master plan. They looked at Wade Stadium and Wheeler. And if you remember what they looked like back in 2015 versus what they look like today, Duluth did a very good job. They accomplished what they needed to do. But highlighted there in yellow is something else that they were looking at. Can we put in an indoor facility? So in that study, they were talking about it. They even had a nice little picture. This is the picture that you would find in there. It has identified, at that time, a number of places, approximately the size, soccer field, seasonal dome, not year-round, with about 100 parking spots. As we know, however, this also did not happen. Anna Tansky, at that time, was the CEO and president of Visit Duluth. And she put out an all-call to different people in the area. She says, we want to put together a Visit Duluth Sports Advisory Group. I was on the council at the time. I was also running Northern Lights basketball. I was a member of DABA. I said, can I join that? And oh, by the way, I'm also on the Proctor City Council. It's great. Come on board. So I did. They would look at that. We met for probably a year, and Councilor Johnson, do you remember, you were athletic director at the time, do you remember going into the office and they asked you a series of questions, what do we have in Proctor? And they were very thorough. This was one of the most thorough studies I'd ever seen put out. Again, paid completely by Visit Duluth, and the result was called the Huddle Up Summary. And in the huddle up summary, highlighting things like, yes, there is a great chance to capture some of that $9 billion sports tourism. Now, I'm sure it's a lot more than $9 billion now. But they said to do that, you need to have a unified regional program. We take that very seriously at PETA, that we look at everything from a regional standpoint, just as it said in the huddle up summary. And they said, if you are going to do this, you are going to have a structure that is competitive with its peer groups nationally. Later on in this presentation, you will hear Eric Madsen lay out what that looks like to be competitive. They also said that a regional sports commission needed to be created. Well, this was brought back to PETA. Eric Madsen was chair at that time. They looked at it. They said it made a lot of sense. They recommended it to City Council, and then on March 28, 2016, the Proctor City Council did pass that resolution in support of an area sports commission. I am not sure if other communities passed one, but this very deliberative body of PETA felt it was important at that time to go that direction. But remember, can we capture a large piece of the tourism pie? The answer is yes. Do we have to have a unified regional program? Yes. Do we have to have a structure that will be comparable to what we will find nationwide? The answer is yes. Now part of the vision. You've heard you have a place in Proctor, YOU. There's also another way to look at it, just the letter U, meaning universal, meaning everyone, meaning no one is cut out of the picture. From anybody that's just out there that'll never play sports to the Division I athletes and people over the age of 70 that want to play pickleball. This is what we're looking at, and not just for Proctor, but across the board. So it helped that in October 2018, when the St. Luke Sports and Event Center went in, some land there, some other things that go on. But I wanted to highlight, and I did one thing, and it's near the bottom, and that's that Night to Shine. And the reason I'm doing that was the Tim Tebow program, if you're familiar with it, and Augustana, and it is basically saying that they deserve to have a right and a night to shine. That quote is from one of the individuals who writes for the Malay. And he wrote that in January, and he was talking about the event that took place on Friday, February 10th of this last year. And if you've read that, I won't read it for you, you can see it for yourself, that is also a student with disability. And it is an example of what Proctor is all about and how we really do and have stood for people in our society, making opportunities available. No more so than this. You're really familiar, I suspect, with this. You've been a major part of it, as has this community. What started out as Jennifer McDonald wanting something for her daughter. The bottom is what I've highlighted, designed to be fully accessible for all children, and particularly address the needs of the 1,000+ regional kids with physical limitation. It doesn't talk just about Proctor kids. It talks about the regional kids. This is here for everybody. Playground for everybody. This is what Proctor has been about. This is part of what we see when we talk about you have a place in Proctor. A regional sports complex could add these programs. Paha could say, boy, we should really talk to the Minnesota Vikings and find out more about the Usher syndrome. Could we have something there? Everything else you look along that list are things that really are not available. Talk about finding hard times to get places to practice and do things. Look at all those adaptive things that we really don't have. Well, we do have adapted archery, for example. I looked that up, and we could go out to Charleston's. They have a place out there where they can do that. And I was particularly interested in Unified Indigenous Games. That didn't start until December of this last year in Bemidji. And we've had some success in this area in that. So lots of possibilities. And this is just on that side of the adaptive, on the unified programs. Courage Kenny is who we will reach out to. They're on the list. They provide the most activities for our youth and adults with disabilities. They work with the service veterans. And as I suspect you know, Proctor does offer unified physical education. We have unified sports. We just had a basketball tournament in Proctor, a few weeks ago. I just saw some more postings. We just were at a unified track meet at Duluth East. And of course, I've talked about the Unified Indigenous Games. We have a place for people. I put this quote by Eunice Kennedy Shriver because this is what she had to say in 1987 at the Special Olympics about the right to have these opportunities. And in this case, when I look at some of our athletes with disabilities, that fits very well. That's why it's not the disability that can hold people back. It is opportunities. And Proctor has been very good. Other places have been very good. We think it can expand more. Lastly, just wanted to let you know that the Special Olympics are coming to the Twin Cities area in 2026. Not far off. Getting near the end of my part of the presentation, but I wanted to throw you a hypothetical example that involves Boys and Girls Clubs, LSC, and the police. Now, here would be a typical setup for a 6-court and a 12-court volleyball in that same area. But imagine the following, if you would. Let's say it's about 7 o'clock at night. Kids at the Boys and Girls Club in Duluth are getting ready to head home. What about if, at that point in time, there was a bus, nonprofit bus, was paying for it. They came up here to a facility here in Proctor. And when they came here, there would be perhaps some of the mentors. They have professional mentors from Lake Superior College, and they would be there helping the students make sure that they didn't fall behind farther in their academics. And so they're here for a couple of hours, making sure that they're not falling behind, just like the Boys and Girls Club believe in. And then about 9 o'clock, 9:30, in walk a bunch of police. Not to arrest the kids, but to play basketball against them, or volleyball, or dodgeball. And not just once or twice, but on many different occasions. Because as I said, you have a place in Proctor. Well, there are some people that don't have a place in Proctor. Those would be gang members. Those would be drug dealers. These kids, just like everybody else, deserve an opportunity to make it in the world. Not to be marginalized, not to fall behind, but to have a chance. This is what we're talking about when you have a place in Proctor. It's also about you could be universal, you can also be unified. For this to work, we have to become unified. We have to make sure that when we go out to, whether it's bonding or whether it's out to other places, that we let people know we have a lot going for us here and there. So that's just one of hundreds of examples of what could be done. You know, I don't know about you this spring, but I can tell you that my grandson plays baseball over in Superior. One of his practices, he was throwing for 4 hours. Not a baseball. He was throwing snow for 4 hours, as was everybody else, because there was no place to really get out there, not only have tryouts, but to play games. Imagine a softball game in a dome. This is Rosemont Dome down by the Chicago area. Imagine a place where there's at least 2 fields and we're practicing there. Imagine what that looks like for softball or for baseball. And not to take away from any other sports. So, if you wonder why build a dome, about a month ago, the ESCO Dome Club, group we'd never heard of until all of a sudden we read about in the paper, had went to the Thompson Township Board and said, we have no money, we have no real plan, we just think that we need to have something. And that first top quote there, after it came out in the Duluth paper, that quote was put there by one of the Duluth city councilors, who says, kudos to ESCO. Duluth should be looking at it. And what we would say to that Duluth city councilor is the same thing. Kudos to ESCO. Kudos to Duluth, but we could say, but we could have a facility right here in Proctor to take care of that. The second quote happened to be somebody that I served with on that Huddle Up feasibility study, and you can see is what she's saying. Buzzword, we need a sports commission in Duluth. We did then, we probably still do, so we can make all the opportunities or more opportunities available for everyone. I end with this slide, and this is talking about a private and a public partnership. It's 2016. You could go to the Nobleville, Indiana website. They're just a suburb outside of Indianapolis. And the city said, you know, we need something for our youth. And so they worked out a deal with an athletic facilities developer and was born that. It is not what it looks like today. It has expanded dramatically. So you would now look up the Mojo Up Sports Complex, much bigger than what they had envisioned in 2016. So the question is, could something like this be built in Proctor? My argument is, yes, it could.
We've got a little different layout than what I'd originally planned, but we'll see if I can stumble through this. So, Peter took it upon themselves. Obviously, you heard the history from Mr. Schwartzbauer, and from our expectations, the needs that were discussed way back as the year 2000 have done nothing but increase with the increased amount of youth sports, even in the school systems, whether it be lacrosse being added, boys and girls, now boys volleyball, all the other upticks from that increased in activity. And what PETA started to look at was from a perspective, number one, of sports tourism. A lot of activity can be generated to a community as a result of running tournaments and drawing people to town. We did seriously do some research as to the need for the unified and the adaptive facilities, which are hard pressed for most of the groups in town to be able to do. So we kind of picked an acronym, and we just said we'd work with what we referred to as what would happen if we could come up with a northern Minnesota athletic facility, okay? And what that led us to is about the same time that Duluth and the other areas were researching activities, they all did a good job researching, but so far, to the best of our knowledge, nothing has come to fruition from any of those activities. Going back into 2019, PETA took a serious look, and we just started having general discussions with developers and with people that created domes and said, what would it take for us to have a dome in our area, okay? And we had a number of people locally get involved with that, okay? And it finally expanded as part of that conversation. It came to light that not only was a turf need in the region necessary, okay, there was a need for additional hard courts, We didn't know exactly how much, we didn't know how big, we didn't know any of that. So Peter approached the Proctor School District, and we approached DABA, and got the two of them to join with us, and in March of 2020, created a proposal to go out to complete a professional feasibility study to determine exactly what was the need, how big was the need, and what was the need for in our region, okay? Surprisingly, COVID hit very shortly after that, put a hard stop and a delay to everything that we were doing. But eventually, as COVID rescinded, we went out, Peter went out and contracted with 292 Design, and with the help of our partners, to complete this feasibility study. And it began, the first part of it began with a market assessment that was done with Ballard and Associates, Ballard King and Associates, okay? The first thing we had to kind of come up with and create was, what kind of area are we talking about when we're talking about, you know, a design for something? This, if you will, focuses on a 60-mile radius from Proctor as the center. And it expands a little bit to the city of Grand Rapids, the city of Aiken. It virtually reaches to the east, almost to Ashland, and then up the shore as far as Grand Marais. And that became kind of the focus area for the regional service area that we were going to kind of work on. Okay. The executive summary, I could read it to you, but the bottom line to it is the intent of the study was to examine adding a hard court facility to support baseball, volleyball, and hard court programs, as well as a dome field house to support turf activities like soccer, baseball, softball, lacrosse, within the context of our region's current and future needs. In other words, not just look today, let's look at what's going forward. And the secondary goal was to study and outline a plan to provide residents in the surrounding region with high-quality sports, recreational opportunities, and examine how the new facilities can generate regional sports tourism, okay? There's a process, you'll see it on the right-hand side, where there's kind of a process that the normal activity would go to take through. We began with what we call stakeholders, identifying stakeholders, people that would be seriously interested in having additional facilities available to them, okay? There were 32 different agencies and organizations that participated in the meetings. A little example on the right-hand side of the slide, Lake Superior College, University of Minnesota, Duluth for their softball program, the College of St. Scholastica for their softball and turf programs, and all the way down to the bottom, it's Courage Kenny Rehab for the disabled individuals that could take an advantage of this type of a program, okay? Went through, asked for, we contracted with Ballard King to complete a market assessment, okay, for an indoor recreational center. We asked them very specifically on the slide for statistical analysis. We wanted to know, what's the incomes? How many households in the region that we're dealing with? What are the incomes that they have? How many adults participate in sports and what sports? How many youth participate in sports and what sports? What sports are increasing in activity? What sports are declining in activity, okay? We asked them to be very specific to the right-hand side of the screen to the local service area, which was defined as the distance people would travel on a regular basis, a minimum of once a week, to utilize this type of facility. We then asked them to, again, work within that regional service area, approximately a 60-mile radius from Proctor. We got that data. That data was given to us. The data is available. Okay, it's part of the feasibility study that we paid for. It's not being presented now. It's way too much in depth for us to throw it out to you now. We had then asked JLJ. Now, 292 changed its name as the architectural design firm. They're now referred to as JLG. These are the same people we began with. Worked with Johnson Wilson to develop a budget. Developed a budget project for each of the identified components we were looking at, separately and together, the hard court and then the turf area, okay? They came up with information. The outline costs that they gave us were comprehensive in study. In other words, we did it right down to the nitty-gritty as much as we could. Includes costs for construction, bricks and mortar, And also, we incorporated additional costs that normally come up when we do concept plans as a norm, okay? The projected budget also includes contingencies to accommodate unknown factors, potential design program changes, and obviously, we have to take into account that most of the costs and stuff that we were determined in our numbers that we were given came as a result of after inflation, after COVID and the inflationary period where everything just increased in value. So the costs that we've been given incorporate all of that into the process. Any project that would be done after mid-2023, which is now, would have to have a cost reevaluation due to inflation changes, both up and down, to be considered in coming to fine-tune the process. Okay? We then completed an operational analysis. In other words, once we had the rough numbers of what it would cost to build, we went in and did an operational analysis as to how can it function, what can it charge, what can be paid for, how many games need to be played, you know, how many hours of activity need to be utilized. We did a thorough understanding of that, and those numbers are also available in the process. Okay? So what does this do for Proctor? Okay, when we're talking a regional scenario, not what does it do, but what can Proctor and PETA do to offer the region? The first thing different than the ESCO plan that was initially talked about by Mr. Schwartzbauer is PETA has 70 acres of land. Some of that 70 acres of land adjoins Proctor School District property. We have infrastructure already laid out into that 70 acres of land. And we've already set an example because the St. Luke's Proctor Sports and Event Center is already created near or adjoining land that we could conceivably use for this. PETA has a comprehensive plan from 2016 that says go out and develop some stuff. It's charging us to do stuff to direct tourism, to direct business development in town. The Visit Proctor marketing plan supports it, and very recently the MIC report on I-35 transportation program that's being discussed right now for development has shown very definitely that the Proctor area, particularly along the I-35 corridor, should and is projected to have some substantial gains in development and in population. Okay? And most importantly, Proctor has a willingness to work with developers to help build a recreational center. This is something that seems to be desired, not a negative. Okay? This is an artist rendering of what we named Northern Minnesota Athletic Facility. It's nothing more than a rendering, but it gives you a perception of size and shape when we talk particularly the domed activity. What came as the result, this may be, you won't see the numbers, but I can tell you, what came as the result of the study and the feasibility study to accomplish and to serve the needs for all that were involved within the region, a turfed area that would encompass 137,000 square feet, large enough to do soccer fields, lacrosse fields, rugby fields, and in this particular design, it shows 2 Division I softball fields. Those same softball fields can be served for baseball up to K-12. Okay? So it has the capability of servicing all kinds of activities. The orange area, if you will, is a 52,000 square foot hard court facility with 6 full-size basketball courts that can be turned into a large number of volleyball courts. Okay? There is, up above at the top of the picture would be the upper floor that has some additional meeting rooms, administrative offices, areas, and the like. As part of that, there are locker rooms, bathroom facilities. The yellow area is a lobby area. The gray buildings inside are for umpires' rooms and the like. It was designed as a very professionally done facility to accomplish lots of things from outside. And the gray area on the right accomplishes a huge amount of additional parking spaces. The way this is laid out right now, this is laid out on school property, school district property. The property line, you can see that, well, just to the right of this, or what would be, you know, to the east of where the parking lot is city property. We researched putting one facility on city property, another facility on school property. We moved them around different sizes, shapes, and the effectiveness or the economics of the design that we have here now is the one that accomplished the best result, okay? For your perception, where the number 1254 is across the top of the screen, okay, and that little orange jut sticks out into it, that is the current hockey facility. It's the St. Luke's Sports Arena. okay, is right there. So these, the way this is laid out, these would be adjoining, and the new parking area would be also adjoining the parking area that currently exists. Okay. We asked the designers to develop this thing in the format of phasing, ideally given the cost that it might be more lucrative for us to do this in phasing. So the green colored is the first phase for, not the first phase, one of the phases for the dome facility. The orange obviously is the hard court facility. The overlapping area in the middle has kind of a brown tint to it, basically would be, that is locker rooms and bathroom facilities. So if the first phase turned out to be the dome, that little additional area would have to be built with it to be able to, you know, provide the facilities that were needed. Okay. So that's, you know, that's what's there. Okay. This is a picture of Rocky Top Sports World. Okay. Just an area and a design for something that somebody that long before us faced the same kind of issue in question. Rocky Top is an 86,000 square foot facility. It's an indoor facility, 6 basketball courts, 12 volleyball courts, indoor grill area, not to mention the most, you know, some of the most exceptional spectator viewing that exists in the country. But this same facility can also provide and host tournaments for martial arts, wrestling, table tennis, in addition to standard basketball, volleyball courts. So the question that we asked and we've put out there now is, could something like this be built in Proctor? With everything that we've designed, we feel the answer is yes. Okay. And now I have to turn this over to Mayor Ward. With the pleasure. Commissioner.
Thank you, Eric. So I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of PETA as a PETA commissioner. So what's the plan now after those presentations? What's our next move to move this project forward? Sports tourism, adaptive unified recreation, and youth through adult sports. We need to get some RFPs, some requests for proposals. As mentioned, it's an indoor turf facility, large enough for 2 softball fields, 6 basketball courts, which could resort to volleyball courts as well. Sport training area, multi-purpose rooms, resource center, support spaces, and a year-round dome, year-round building air supported. Potential financial and program stakeholders. PETA will be contacting a wide variety of potential financial and program stakeholders, asking for commitments to help fund a facility such as discussed. A few of those are listed on the right-hand side: Courage Kenny, Rehab Institute, Boys and Girls Club, colleges, franchise training centers, private developers, and 2024 bonding bill requests. PETA knows that this is going to be a P3 project partnership, and what I mean by that is a public-private partnership. PETA will be considering every idea and concept provided. We'll actively seek groups that can and could commit to long-term financial, rental, and use agreements. And PETA will be working with elected officials on bonding requests and other infrastructure requests. As you can see on this screen, the value of a sports complex such as this has a lot of value to it. Some of them is to provide a multi-use facility to sports teams, running enthusiasts, and persons of different abilities, to be a positive community asset that allows people with different abilities to shine their light and share their talents, and to mentor children on athletic values, opening young hearts and minds to the amazing world of sports, along with a lot of other values this community could see. So with that, I'll hand it back to Chair Madsen of PETA, as I believe there's a recommendation.
So with that, I'm assuming this is still on? Okay. With that, the sole purpose of the presentation that we just presented, offered to you, was that PETA would like to request the city council to move positively on Resolution 2423, authorizing City Administrator Rich to file application with the Minnesota Management and Budget Office for the purpose of requesting funding for the Northern Minnesota Regional Sports Facility.
Thank you. So council, you heard the recommendation from PETA and Chair Mattson on resolution number 24-23. Is there a motion to accept? I'll make a motion to accept. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Councilor Benson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I love aggressive projects. And I don't want anyone to feel that just because I'm asking questions, I'm against it. I'm just seeking some additional information. When we look at Ballard and King Associates, is this the former 292?
Ballard and King Associates partnered with 292. In other words, 292 does the architectural design format and the building design. The market analysis portion was performed and presented by Ballard and King. It was a two-part presentation or two-part solution.
Okay. And the regional service area is approximately 60 miles.
60-mile radius with Proctor at the
Yeah.
center.
But yet, we know there are teams that come up from the cities to use facilities in the area. Why 60 miles and not larger?
Due to the cost and the operational cost, we can bring teams in from out of town, from out of the area. They would not be necessarily the regular supportive process. The tournaments would be things that would be an additional and excess, okay? What we look to do from the operational standpoint was be able to function on a regular basis using the immediate region.
And I noticed that when you look at the stakeholders involved in the facility studies, there was St. Luke's, but not Essentia. And I was just kind of curious, since Essentia has an investment within the city of Proctor, and why they were not included.
I would suggest that that's a mistake on our part to not put them on that list that's there, but there were 32 organizations that were involved, and Essentia was asked. They were just not listed in that short list.
So did I hear right, you said 32?
There were 32.
Yeah, that's
32
impressive.
different organizations.
And there was talk in, I think, the handout that we got about the operational analysis, which brought me to the costs. I didn't see anything about the investment that this is going to bring to Proctor. What's the value of this facility?
Are you asking me about the dollar generation for the city of Proctor in this case, or you're asking me for the cost to build and design and build the facility?
Probably I didn't present it very well, but I was looking for, the cost of this facility along with the value that'll bring, the estimated revenue. And when I say estimated revenue, that would include, not only the use, but perhaps the overall market for hotels, food venues, stuff like that.
The plan honestly has not been extended to the level that we would want to incorporate with tourism, okay, to be able to generate those. We concentrated on the use of the facility, the operational costs, the design. So I do not have answers to the question that you're asking.
Okay. Ms. Mayor, could I?
Yeah, keep going.
Oh, okay. And I was just wondering if it's possible if we could get the slides that were shown,
Yes?
because it went through and didn't have a that would be nice if we could get a copy of the signs, the slides. I was curious that, looking at the plans, there wasn't any community rooms? Or was it so small, did I miss that?
There's not a large community room. There are some spaces available that are designed for community. They are smaller in design than probably what you would have here at this particular room. It was designed more as a general sports complex with the availability of the necessary rooms to support the complex, its administration, and the like.
Okay. Yeah, because and the only reason I bring it up is I've had the opportunity to go into a number of cities that have sport complexes with community rooms incorporated with their city complex. I know that we had talked about perhaps moving into a different municipal complex. And I was wondering if that was discussed, or was sports just the focus?
We did not incorporate the municipality activity into the plan.
Okay. And then I was just adding up the square footage of the facility, and it comes to about 240,000 square feet, give or take.
Give or take, potentially 137 for the dome, and another 52,000. Yeah, you're probably with the other areas and the complex, yes, it could be very close to that 240.
Okay. And I guess, yeah, I would also like to see, if it's possible, the study and the market analysis, just to kind of get a better grasp of.
That information is available to you, sir.
It is available.
It is available to you, sir.
Very good. And then my last question is funding for a regional sports facility. And within the presentation, it's called an athletic facility. So I didn't know if sports facility or athletic facility is the correct term that should be used.
On the resolution you're speaking, Counselor?
Yes, because, on the presentation, it was
Yeah.
athletic facility, and the resolution says sports facility. And I know when you look at bonding, words matter, where if you say you want a police department, you're not going to get funded, but if you call it a regional public safety facility, the money flows.
Okay.
Counselor Benson, that was probably my omission, so if you do pass the resolution, I would propose that we change that to athletic.
And that was just an observation.
It's a
I'm
good
not
one.
proposing it be changed. I just wanted to at least address that possibility. And with that, I think, unless there's other questions that generate more questions, I'm done, and thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Anyone
Any
else?
other discussion, questions?
I have a question of the turf fields,
Mhm.
and I said it, is there a difference between Division I softball and Division II softball in square footage of fields?
I would have to verify that. We know that Division II would supply for the local area.
Yeah.
Okay, whether the fields are slightly different than that, I don't know. We asked for Division I because it would encompass all the things that we would need. If the square footage could be reduced a tad amount, and all we worked for was Division II, that would be something we could do in our favor and save some dollars and costs. But we went for the dream. Okay? We went for the dream to see what we could accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I guess with that motion.
Nope.
Oh, Counselor.
With all the questions I asked, the one thing I failed to say is I did want to thank PETA and the committee for the hard work, the long haul that this has taken. If successful, it's going to be transformational for the city. And I'm certainly excited to see where it goes. So I thank you for that effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll just make note again to Administrator Rich's point, I'll amend my motion to reflect the name change as Counselor Benson mentioned. If Counselor Johnson would like to amend your second.
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you. So we got a motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you again for your hard work on that. That will bring us to 6D, Resolution 21-23, donation acceptance. So in your packet, you see the resolution accepting donations for the purchase of personal thermal imaging cameras for the Proctor Volunteer Fire Department. You can see the list of businesses that have donated for these cameras. Just looking for a motion to approve resolution number 21-23.
So moved.
Counselor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6E, Resolution 22-23, donation acceptance for the Proctor Police Department. Again, in your packet is a resolution accepting donations for the purchase of personal protection equipment for the Proctor Police Department. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 22-23?
So moved.
Counselor Benson made the motion. Is there a second? I'll second. Oh, Counselor Reuter seconded that. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That'll bring us to 7A, closed meeting pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D03 and 13D05 subdivision 3. Looking for a motion to go into closed session for the sale of real estate consideration.
So moved.
Counselor DeWall made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. All right, we'll resume the regular city council meeting, and that'll bring us to members' concerns. Councilor Benson.
I have none, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DeWall.
I have nothing.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
I just wanted to say how clean the city is looking. With the street cleaning going on and picking up the branches and all that kind of good stuff. I think the Habermans were down doing some stuff downtown. It's looking pretty good.
Yes, it
So,
is.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Jake,
Oh.
that was a really good Memorial Day service, so thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah,
you.
It
and
was, it was.
Couldn't have done it without the mayor's welcome.
Or the American Legion, for that matter.
Well, and, you know, and that's a good point that there's a lot of people that contribute, including, you know, the city, getting the grounds set, putting up the new flag. So, I mean, it was a community effort,
And it was a good community effort. Thank you.
but thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Reuter.
I have nothing.
Okay, well, that saves a lot of time for me then. May 24th, I was at the Proctor McDonald's. The Proctor Police Department participated in a McHero night where 20% of the sales from 4 to 7 that night went to the Proctor PD. I think when we left, there was about, I think she said about $300 that was given to the PD. I don't know where that actually ended up, but another, it was a good event. And they were kind of the guinea pigs for that program, and lady said they were gonna, it was so nice to see the community come out that they were gonna move it to West Duluth and other surrounding McDonald's, so. To hit on Councilor Johnson's point, it was another amazing Memorial Day observance on May 29th, so thank you to the American Legion and Jake, or Councilor Benson, and everyone else that participated in that. I think there was about 90 people that were in attendance, so, and beautiful morning, so it was really nice. At the last MIC meeting I was at, the I-35 corridor plan was discussed, and they did have an Uggstead Road interchange on there. The lady from MnDOT spoke on that portion of the project, saying that it wasn't a feasible option. They weren't a big fan of it, but I did speak of the importance of it, telling them the benefit that that could bring to the city of Proctor, and to please keep it in their corridor plan, so we'll see if that stays on there. Administrator Rich and I will be meeting with Representative Zelinskikar on June 13th to discuss opportunities for Proctor, and we're also working on setting up a meeting with Senator Hoschild in the near future. There will be a 3rd Street Park input opportunity on June 13th from 5:30 to 7 at the 3rd Street and 1st Avenue Blacktop Park. If you'd like to give input on that, please attend. I know we all got an invite from Russell Haberman, who will be down there taking input, so if you got ideas or suggestions, please show up from 5:30 to 7 on June 13th. Gonna wish all the fathers out there a happy Father's Day on June 18th. That's before our next meeting, so I'm just covering bases here. And again, a reminder, our next council meeting will be Tuesday, June 20th. And council, I know in your mailboxes you had a LMC 2023 annual conference. If you're interested in going to that, please contact Administrator Rich to get registered. I have nothing further. Attorney Bray?
Nothing.
Thank you. Administrator Rich, anything to add? Thank you. With that being said, we'll entertain a motion to approve the bills in the amount of $136,462.88.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Councilor DeWall made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you.